Sawadee-ka. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group, and we're starting a new book. We're starting volume 9, which is titled The Six Sense Bases. This book is going to help you to understand sensual desire. This is a fetter that's in the mind, and we've been talking about this all the way through all your development on the path to enlightenment. When we talk about craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, what we're talking about is sensual desire. But now with this particular book, we're going to dive into detail to be able to see specifically what this is so that we can parse it apart. Because by understanding the six sense bases, you'll be able to figure out exactly what sense base or combination of sense bases your discontentedness is arising due to. And you can learn how to protect or guard these doorways, because anytime you're experiencing discontentedness, it's coming through one of these doorways. So welcome to all of you guys. I'm pleased to see that you're here, whether you're joining for the first time or you're joining regularly. The way that we do this program is I invite students in Zoom to be able to read a chapter in the book. And as you read, or you would like to volunteer to read, is you can raise your hand electronically in order to volunteer to read. And then after somebody reads the chapter, I'm going to share some teachings on that particular chapter and then open up to any and all questions that you guys have. If you're in Zoom, you can volunteer to read by just electronically raising your hand. And if you'd like to ask questions, you can do that from Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom by putting that in the comment section. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and then unmute your microphone and ask any and all questions that you like. So it looks like Pat has volunteered to read this first chapter. So Pat, if you'd like to go ahead, you're more than welcome to.
Great, thank you. The six sense bases. Monks, there are these six sense bases. What six? The eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, the mind. When, monks, a noble disciple understands as they really are the gratification, the danger, and the escape in the case of these six sense bases, then he is called a noble disciple who is a stream enterer, no longer bound to the netherworld, fixed in destination with Nibbana as his destination.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. So in order to get to the first stage of enlightenment, among other things, you need to understand the six sense bases, because this is where you're going to really be able to dissect sensual desire and understand what that is and how it's happening and how it's arising discontentedness, so that ultimately by the time you get to the second stage of enlightenment, you can reduce and eliminate the sensual desire to ultimately make your way to the third stage of enlightenment and the fourth stage of enlightenment. So this fetter of sensual desire is helping you to understand how your mind is longing and yearning through your sense bases. Your mind is wanting or expecting or longing or yearning or craving, desiring permanently agreeable contact through these sense bases. And when you have agreeable contact through the sense bases, that's where the pleasant feelings are arising, like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But when you have disagreeable contact through your sense bases, that's where the painful feelings are arising, like the anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. So the Buddha is interested in making sure that any students who are progressing closer and closer to this first stage of enlightenment, that they understand the six sense bases and how your mind ultimately is going to need to guard these sense bases. So what the six sense bases are, when we refer to them generally, it's the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind. Remember, the Buddha is teaching you the way the world is. He's not explaining to you the way the world should be. He's explaining to you what's actually transpiring with this being who you are. That when you experience contact through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body, or the mind itself, and the mind sees that as agreeable, that's because of a certain craving, desire, attachment. Those are the languages, or that's the words that we've been using up to this point, is craving, desire, attachment. But what is really being described in the 10 fetters is sensual desire, that the mind is longing, yearning through these sense bases, wanting agreeable contact. And when you get that, you get those pleasant feelings. But when you don't get it, the mind experiences the painful ones. So you can take some examples from your own life when you get discontent. Generally, we've been talking about it as craving, desire, attachment. But you can actually dissect that even further and see the exact sense base that you're experiencing the discontentedness through. So for example, with the ear, right? If you're at a stoplight and someone pulls up to you in a car with certain music on that you find agreeable, you might get really happy and really excited and ready to dance, right? And you get so happy, you get these pleasant feelings. But now you move up to the next traffic light and somebody else pulls up to you with a different type of music. And now that music you find disagreeable. This is because of your sensual desire. And now with that disagreeable contact through the ear, you might experience frustration or agitation or annoyance. And this is where the mind, with a lack of wisdom of these things, will attribute that frustration to that person or something external, when in reality it's coming from your own mind. So an unenlightened mind that is untrained is going to experience the pleasant feelings and painful feelings based on agreeable and disagreeable contact through these sense spaces, where someone who's trained their mind, they can maintain their contentedness and joy no matter what they're hearing through the ear, that it's no longer agreeable or disagreeable, it's just contact. It's just a sound. That's all it is. And the same thing is happening with each one of these sense spaces. We can go through each one of them and give you examples. Like, for example, with the nose, you might be walking down the street and you're in front of a flower shop and you smell the smell or the odor of the flowers coming out. And you're like, oh, wow, that smells really great. And maybe you get really excited about that. But now you walk a couple more steps and you smell the sewer. And now you're frustrated or agitated or annoyed. Where the mind needs to understand that all these things are impermanent, that the odor that you smell coming from the flower shop, that is impermanent. No need to cling to it and have conditional pleasant feelings. Of course, your mind can just know, like, oh, wow, that's a really good smell. That's really nice. And you can train your mind to understand that and even enjoy the smell without having a conditional pleasant feeling. So that now when you walk down the street and you smell the sewer, then your mind isn't affected by that, that you just understand, like, there's the sewer. We know that smell is impermanent, so why don't we just keep walking and make it as impermanent as possible? Okay, so each one of these sense spaces, your mind is experiencing either pleasant feelings or painful feelings based on contact through them if you have sensual desire. And where this is really helpful for you in your practice is that you can delineate exactly what it is that sprang up and arose a certain craving, desire, attachment in your mind. You guys might have heard me talk about when I was eliminating coffee from my practice, that I had gone several weeks without having a coffee. It was like 8 weeks. I'd kind of like gradually expanded it further and further and further. And eventually I got to 8 weeks thinking like, wow, I got this one beat. This one's gone. Thank goodness. Because I was getting all these headaches and all this dry mouth and shakes and all these things. But then I walked past a coffee shop one day and I smelt the odor, and boom, I was right into the coffee shop ordering a coffee. And there I was getting ready to drink a coffee when I thought I had extinguished this craving. Well, after I had drank about a third or a half of the cup and I threw it away, I walked away and I was like, man, what happened here? Like, what was going on? Why did I do this? And I was able to delineate it down to the nose sense space, that I wasn't guarding the nose. And when I got that odor of the coffee, when I walked past the shop, boom, my craving arose and I went right into the coffee shop. So by delineating it down to that level of detail, rather than just thinking about it generally as craving, desire, attachment, I was then able to put decisions into practice that would allow me to fully extinguish this craving. So that now, when I was walking down the street from that point forward, I would kind of keep an eye out for any coffee shops or any vendors that were selling coffee, and I would switch to the other side of the street so that I wouldn't smell that odor and arise the craving in the mind. And I needed to do this for a period of time until my mind had fully extinguished this particular craving. And it was helpful to know that it was the nose, because then I could guard it. And then once the craving was fully extinguished, now I don't have to do that anymore. I can actually go into coffee shops. I can smell the coffee. Someone can be sitting right in front of me drinking coffee, and I have no interest in drinking it whatsoever. So understanding these sense spaces and then figuring out which sense space is getting stimulated as you're going through the world, this is going to help you to put a plan together to extinguish some of these cravings. And sometimes it's more than just one particular sense space. Like, let's just say you're arguing with your life partner, your children, or something like this, or they're trying to argue with you. with you seeing them and looking at them, you're seeing their facial expressions, their hand gestures, and all this kind of stuff, and you're hearing their voice. So you've got two sense bases here. So that's why what you would be wise to do in that situation is just close the eyes and walk away, or just walk away and move the mind, move these sense bases out of the way so that you don't keep experiencing this contact. This would be protecting your doorways. So the Buddha is here introducing you to these doorways. And I've got this chart down here to help you be able to see that there's these internal sense bases, because this is what the Buddha is going to ultimately introduce you to. When we talk about the sense bases in general, it's the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. But then we delineate it even further, that we call the sense bases, the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, we call those the internal sense bases. And then there's external sense bases, meaning the eyes come in contact with a physical form. And that's what the eyes see. And that's called the external sense base. The ears come in contact with sounds. The sound is the external sense base. The nose comes in contact with odors. That odor is the external sense base. Then the tongue comes in contact with flavors. The flavors are the external sense base. The body comes in contact with physical objects. That's the external sense base. And then the mind comes in contact with mental objects. So it's helpful to be able to understand the internal sense bases and the external sense base, because you're going to need to protect your mind and guard your mind when you're coming in contact with these external sense bases, because now you're going to be taking in contact through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body, and the mind. So this particular discourse is just the Buddha introducing the six sense bases. And what he's saying here is that a noble disciple, meaning someone who studied very close with him, understands as they really are the gratification, danger, and escape. What the gratification is that the mind is having sensual desire, that the mind is longing, yearning through these sense bases, wanting gratification. It's wanting permanently agreeable contact. That's what the mind's trying to do because of its sensual desire. It's trying to get this gratification. Then you need to be able to see the danger in this sensual desire, that as long as you allow the mind to get those conditional pleasant feelings, the painful ones are waiting for you right around the corner. So if you get so happy and excited because you got a new job, maybe you were chasing after that for a while, you were chasing more money, a bigger title, or whatever it is. If you got all excited about that, well, when that job's over, because it's impermanent and it will be over, then your mind's going to experience the painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. So you need to be able to see the danger in this gratification, that if you keep allowing the mind to get those conditioned pleasant feelings, then the danger is that you're going to end up in the painful feelings. You're going to experience discontentedness. Then you're going to need to know the escape from this sensual desire. The escape is the Eightfold Path. So if you've been studying the Eightfold Path, or that's something that you're working on, that is the escape from this constant cycle of chasing due to sensual desire, wanting gratification, experiencing the danger, which is the discontentedness. You can escape that through the Eightfold Path. So the Buddha says this noble disciple who understands the six sense bases is a stream enterer. Among other things that a individual who's in the first stage of enlightenment is going to need to know, they're going to need to know the six sense bases. So a stream enter is the first stage of enlightenment, because just like a log enters the stream, it's going to eventually get to the ocean. If you get into the first stage of enlightenment, you're going to eventually get to enlightenment. It's only a matter of time. And the Buddha is saying this stream enter is no longer bound to the nether world. What he's talking about here is the lower realms of hell, animal realm, and afflicted spirits. That by the time you get to that first stage of enlightenment, it's impossible for you to be reborn down into the lower realms. So this is a major step in your journey to enlightenment. And this person who's in the first stage of enlightenment, they're fixed in destination with enlightenment as their destination, meaning they will get to enlightenment. It's only a matter of time, either in this life or a maximum of 7 future lives. So let me know what questions you guys have here. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So Marcy has a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Teacher David. Actually, I was just raising my hand to read next.
Oh, okay. Maybe Vibhav has a question. Go ahead, sir.
So I have, like I said, two different questions, or more like a experience that I had yesterday. I was sitting down with my son. He was playing video game, and he got a little bit frustrated about like not making progress. And then I was just trying to explain to him what he should be trying to do. And then something happened, and I was just like, I just made a little laugh, and then because he was very frustrated, he got really mad, and then he was like, getting angry, and his eyes was bulging, and stuff like that. He was extremely angry with me for some reason. So I did see those two senses coming, like you were just talking about, where basically you were seeing his facial expression as well as like his voice was just, both of them were kind of hitting me in a way that was making me a little bit frustrated. So then I did walk away, and I went and did some meditation. Was my time anyway. But then even after that, because the frustration it made me a little bit annoyed also and frustrated. But those things kind of carried over for a little bit. And it like led to other conversations, it wasn't that strong, but it did like lead me to being a little bit more harsh in my speech and with my wife and everything. And so I was wondering if does that become the mental object at that point of time, where because the feeling that you're feeling becomes, and you're ingrained in your mind, you're already frustrated and annoyed with the situation. And then you are experiencing that with your mind, and that becomes a mental object, or this mental object is just the fetters in that case.
Yeah, the mental objects are already there. That's the 10 fetters. And by you allowing the mind to become discontent with a feeling, and then it affected the condition of your mind more long term, for several hours or so, that is then going to feed those mental objects. It's going to, add in more central desire, more ill will, the anger, hatred, ill will. It's going to feed that mental object. So that's why you need to be able to put a blockade at the bodily sensations and cutting off and letting go, and then all the while breaking up those mental objects and getting them out of the mind. So it's not that it's forming a mental object. At this point, the mental objects are already formed, and now it's just feeding into it. Early in birth, though, at birth, we had central desire and we had ignorance, and a lot of these other fetters are actually getting formed as part of the mind's lack of wisdom, that as we age, we form these mental objects. Like ill will didn't exist in our mind when we were first born. We didn't go into the nursery hating other babies, but because of our craving and because of our ignorance, it formed this mental object of ill will over time. That's why children are so happy and so giddy, because they don't have ill will in their mind at such a young age. But over time, we've had so many cravings that were spurring and arising the anger and the frustration and agitation that it formed this mental object of ill will. So at this point in your life, they're already formed. And now, if you continue to allow this cycle to continue, it's just going to feed those mental objects and have them more and more deeply rooted. So that's why the Buddha teaches you that life cycle of how you need to be aware of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects, so that you can put a blockade at the bodily sensations, all the while you're working to uproot the mental objects through directly and skillfully working with those fetters and the proactive techniques to be able to eliminate them from the mind.
Good, thank you. And I have a second question also, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, it said, the Buddha says that one who understands, the noble disciple who understands the gratification, the danger and escape, is called a stream enterer. So the essential desire doesn't actually go away till like the third stage of enlightenment, right, fully, and it just diminishes in the second stage. And so what does this mean that it says then he understands? Like, is this intellectually understanding? Because if you have ill will and you have sensual desire, you have craving, desire, attachment till the second stage. You get like frustrated, annoyed, and angry at some point. So like, how does somebody decipher whether, like, at what level of understanding or just practicing the understanding and practicing the understanding of the six sense bases and the gratification and the danger, does somebody know that they're esteemed or understand their esteemed?
Yeah, so
Sorry, go ahead.
So understanding something is to have the intellectual understanding of it, but having eradicated it, that's where it's completely uprooted out of the mind. So what he's saying here is that a noble disciple who is in the first stage of enlightenment will understand gratification, danger, and escape, but they haven't fully implemented it yet. They just understand it. And that's part of what's motivating you to be able to continue on your journey to get rid of sensual desire and purify the mind more fully, because you understand the gratification, danger, and escape. So there's this layered approach where in the first stage of enlightenment, you just understand these things, but you haven't fully uprooted sensual desire out of the mind yet.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, I probably have this, if I don't have it here. No, I don't have it in this chapter, but I have it in other chapters where I help you to be able to see what the gratification, danger, and escape is down in my comments, because that's what you would need to understand, is that gratification is the mind's central desire, wanting to be gratified, permanent, agreeable contact. The danger is the discontentedness, the pleasant, painful, neither painful nor pleasant, and the escape is the Eightfold Path. And you need to be able to understand that and see that to be true through your own independent verification. And you can gain that through understanding the six sense bases and central desire as a whole.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It's really helpful.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. So it looks like we don't have any other questions. So we'll move on to chapter 2. And Marcy, you would like to read this one?
Sure. Thank you, Teacher David.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see, the simile of the great log? Do you see monks impermanence ritual?
Mm-hmm.
Go. I'm going to go to my bedroom and close the door so that we don't have to deal with that. I apologize. All right, Jax, please, out. Come on. All right. The simile of the great log. Do you see, monks, that the great log being carried along by the current of the river Ganges? Yes, venerable sir. If, monks, that great log does not veer towards the near shore, does not veer towards the far shore, does not sink in midstream, does not get cast up on high grounds, does not get caught by human beings, does not get caught by non-human beings, does not get caught in a whirlpool, and does not become inwardly rotten, slope, and incline towards the ocean. For what reason? Because the current of the river Ganges slants, slopes, and inclines towards the ocean. So too, monks, if you do not veer towards the near shore, do not veer towards the far shore, do not sink in midstream, do not cast up on high ground, do not get caught by human beings, do not get caught by non-human beings, do not get caught in a whirlpool, do not become inwardly rotten, you will slant, slope, and incline towards Nibbana. For what reason? Because right view slants, slopes, and inclines towards Nibbana. When this was said, a certain monk asked the perfectly enlightened one, "What, venerable sir, is the near shore? What is the far shore? What is the sinking in midstream? What is getting cast upon a high ground? What is getting caught by human beings? What is getting caught by non-human beings? What is getting caught in a whirlpool? What is inward rottenness?" The near shore, monk, is the designation of the 6 internal sense bases. The far shore is the designation of the 6 external sense bases. The sinking in midstream is the designation of excitement and desire. Getting cast up upon high ground is a designation for the conceit, I am. And what, monks, is getting caught by human beings? Here, someone lives in association with household practitioners. He rejoices with them and sorrows with them. He is happy when they are happy and sad when they are sad, and he involves himself in their affairs and duties. This is getting caught by human beings. And what, monks, is getting caught by non-human beings? Here, someone lives a holy life with desire to be reborn in a certain order of heavenly beings, thinking, by this virtue or vow of austerity or holy life, I will become a heavenly being or one among the heavenly beings. This is called getting caught up by non-human beings. Getting caught up in a whirlpool, this, monks, is a designation of the 5 chords of sensual pleasure. And what, monks, is inward rottenness? Here, someone is immoral, one of unwholesome character, of impure and suspect behavior, secretive in his acts, not aesthetic through claiming to be one, not a celibate through claiming to be one. Inward rotten, corrupt, wicked. This is called inward rottenness.
Okay, thank you, Marcy. So here, these are things that the Buddha is teaching you that are going to hold you back from getting to enlightenment. And he's using that same analogy of the log entering the stream and getting to the ocean. And he's using that as a way to help you to understand so that you can remember these kinds of things. So if you don't experience these things, then you make your way towards enlightenment, because just like a river slants, slopes, and inclines towards the ocean, that not experiencing any of these things, then you will also slant, slope, and incline towards enlightenment. So the first one is that you have right view, that you need to establish right view. And that's why when I start with students, I start them off with right view, just like the Buddha did, because without right view, why would you ever practice the path to enlightenment? That's where you learn that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. So you start with right view. And then once you have right view, then the Buddha is saying the near shore is the designation for the 6 internal sense bases, meaning that if you don't understand what these 6 internal sense bases are, in the far shore is the designation for the external sense bases. If you don't know what these are, you can easily get caught up in your sensual desire. So you need to not be on the near shore or the far shore, meaning you need to understand the internal sense bases and the external sense bases so that now you can guard those doorways and that now you can more readily make your way to enlightenment. Sinking in midstream is that excitement and desire that you get those pleasant feelings. And because you get the pleasant feelings, that now that the mind has even more craving, even more desire. Getting cast up on high ground, that's the ego, the conceit I am, because the mind is thinking that I'm above everybody else. That's going to hold you back from getting to enlightenment. Then getting caught up by human beings, the Buddha is talking here about how ordained practitioners would live in association with household practitioners. And basically, when they are happy, they are happy. When they're sad, they are sad. This is essentially having your feelings attached to other people. That if your mother, father, brothers, sisters, your children, or other people are happy or sad, you form those same feelings based on whatever they're experiencing. And you need to be able to understand that the people around you may not be practicing these teachings. And because of that, their mind's still going to be going up and down and up and down. And if you allow your mind to do that, you're going to not be able to make your way to enlightenment. So there's no harm in associating with household practitioners. What the Buddha is talking about here is basing your inner feelings on what other people are experiencing. So this is where you can understand empathy. Sometimes when people talk about empathy, they talk about someone who understands other people's feelings and who shares in those feelings. That's not what you would be interested in cultivating. Other people, when they talk about empathy, they talk about understanding people's feelings. That's the empathy that you would like to practice, where by the time you get to enlightenment, even understanding the Four Noble Truths by itself, you can understand other people's feelings. So like when somebody has a relative that dies and they're sad about that, I understand their feelings. I understand they're attached to their relative who's now passed away, but I don't need to share in that feeling. I don't need to be sad and sorrowful just because they're sad and sorrowful. That's like getting down into the quicksand with this person. Instead, you can stand on stable ground and offer a hand, right? So the Buddha is teaching you not to allow your mind to experience conditioned feelings based on the conditioned feelings of other people. And that's not getting caught by human beings. And then if you get caught by non-human beings, what this is that you have a longing, a yearning, and a desire to exist in the heavenly world. This is part of the fetters. And sometimes people have been taught this, that the ultimate goal of this life is to believe certain things, worship in certain ways, and then you will have this eternal life in heaven. And this just isn't true. You can see through the universal truth of impermanence that none of these realms are actually permanent. But as long as the mind continues to believe that, you might get caught up by non-human beings where you have this ultimate desire, this longing, yearning to exist in the heavenly world. Then getting caught up in a whirlpool is the designation for the 5 chords of central pleasure. You're going to get to see that here in a moment, where we're going to be studying the 5 chords of central pleasure. Then inward rottenness is this unwholesome character, this impure character where you're secretive and you don't want people to know what it is that you're actually doing. Whereas if you're living a good, wholesome, moral life, making wise decisions, hey, you're an open book. Anybody can take a look at what you're doing and you're completely fine with that because you know you're not doing anything unwise or unwholesome. But if you're secretive in what you're doing and you have certain immoral character, then you're going to try to hide what it is that you're doing. And the Buddha talks about some of the things that the ascetics would hide during his lifetime is that people would claim to be an ordained practitioner when they're really not. Or they would claim that they're no longer having sex when they really actually are. And this is going to hold you back is if you're lying, if you're having corrupt activities, if you're immoral in your moral conduct, this is all going to hold you back from getting to enlightenment. So let me know if you guys have any questions on any of these individual things here that the Buddha is helping you to understand that you're going to need to eliminate these things in order to make sure you can make your way to enlightenment. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So let's go to the next chapter, chapter 3. Would someone like to read this one? Okay, Keely, go ahead, ma'am.
Five chords of sensual pleasure. Monks, there are these 5 chords of sensual pleasure. What are the 5? 1. Forms recognizable by the eye that are wished for, desired, agreeable, and likable, connected with sensual desire, and provocative of craving. 2. Sounds recognizable by the ear that are wished for, desired, agreeable, and likable, connected with sensual desire, and provocative of craving. 3. Odors recognizable by the nose that are wished for, desired, agreeable, and likable, connected with sensual desire, and provocative of craving. 4. Flavors recognizable by the tongue that are wished for, desired, agreeable, and likable, connected with sensual desire, and provocative of craving. 5. Physical objects recognizable by the body that are wished for, desired, agreeable, and likable, connected with sensual desire, and provocative of craving. These are the 5 chords of sensual pleasure. As to those ascetics and Brahmins who are tied to these 5 chords of sensual desire, obsessed with them, and completely committed to them, and who use them without seeing the danger in them or understanding the escape from them, it may be understood of them. They have met with calamity, met with disaster. The evil one may deal with them as he likes. Suppose a forest deer who was bound lay down on a heap of chaps. It might be understood of him. He has met with calamity, met with disaster. The hunter can do with him as he likes, and when the hunter comes, he cannot go where he wants. As to those ascetics and Brahmins who are not tied to those 5 chords of sensual desire, who are not obsessed with them or completely committed to them, and who use them seeing the danger in them and understanding the escape from them, it may be understood of them. They have not met with calamity, not met with disaster. The evil one cannot do with them as he likes. Suppose a forest deer who was unbound lay down on a heap of chaps. It might be understood of him, he has not met with calamity, not met with disaster. The hunter cannot do with him as he likes. And when the hunter comes, he can go where he wants. Suppose a forest deer is wandering in the forest wilds. He walks without fear, stands without fear, sits without fear, lies down without fear. Why is that? Because he is out of the hunter's range. So too, quite distant from sense desires, distant from unwholesome mental states, he enters and resides in the first jhana, which is with thinking and pondering, based on seclusion, filled with excitement and joy. This monk is said to have blindfolded Mara, to have become invisible to the evil one by depriving Mara's eye of its opportunity. This follows with the second jhana, the third jhana, the fourth jhana. The space is infinite. The consciousness is infinite. The base of nothingness, the base of neither perception nor non-perception. The discourses are identical except for their reference to age. Again, by completely surmounting the base of neither perception nor non-perception, a monk enters upon and resides in the elimination of perception and feeling, and his taints are destroyed by his seeing with wisdom. This monk is said to have blindfolded Mara, to have become visible to the evil one by depriving Mara's eyes of its opportunity, and to have crossed beyond attachment to the world. He walks without fear, stands without fear, sits without fear, lies down without fear. Why is that? Because he is out of the evil one's range. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Keely. So here, the Buddha is introducing you to the 5 chords of central pleasure. There's 6 sense bases, but then there's these chords. You can think of it like a rope leading from the internal sense base to the external sense base. That's the actual craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning between the internal sense base and the external sense base. So what the Buddha teaches you to essentially do is cut these cords. Because as long as you have this cord, your mind's going to be pulled in that direction, right? If you've ever been walking through the mall and you saw a handsome man or a beautiful woman and your mind just kind of pulled in that direction because your eyes wanted to see the different shapes of that person's body or their hair or their jewelry or their clothing, that's the cord pulling you in that direction. So you need to be able to get to a point where you understand that this is occurring and you need to break that cord. You need to restrain the mind and pull it away. And what the Buddha is saying is for anybody who's trapped by these cords, that if these cords still exist and you don't understand them and you allow the mind to indulge in them, then you're tied up just like a deer is tied up and laying in this heap of traps. And now the hunter can do anything it wants with you. And in this analogy, the hunter is the evil one, or Mara. Some people refer to this being as the devil or Satan. This is a real being. It's a formless being that is going to try to tempt you, because the last thing this being is interested in is you getting to enlightenment. This being is interested in causing calamity in the world, and it's going to try to tempt you through your sensual desire. That's how it pulls you in a direction, because if this being can pull you towards a central desire and you latch on to that, now you're further and further away from enlightenment, and you're going to be making decisions through your craving, desire, attachment that is ultimately going to lead you to unwholesome Gama. Let's just say you were out of town and you have a partner at home, a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and you're out of town, you're vacationing somewhere by yourself, and maybe you see some individuals who are doing sex work or something like this. And now maybe you see those people and maybe you indulge in that and you move in that direction. And now maybe you end up partaking in that particular service. Well, now your central desire, your 5 chords of central pleasure have taken you into a direction that's going to produce unwholesome results. And now the evil one, Mara, can do with them as you please. So this evil being, this being that's interested in causing calamity is now tempting you through these kinds of things. And the Buddha is saying that once you're not tied to these 5 cords of sensual pleasure, your mind's no longer obsessed with them. Now you can walk without fear. You can lay down without fear. You can stand without fear because you know that your sensual desire is no longer there, and this being can't tempt you. It can't pull you in a direction that is going to lead to any kind of calamity. Now, this being can't make decisions for you, and it can't force you to do any particular thing, but it can tempt you. And then ultimately, it's your decisions of what you choose to do. So ultimately, by you getting rid of your sensual desire, you can get to the point where you're free of any kind of longing, yearning through the mind. But even when you get to the jhanas, that's what the Buddha is talking about here, that now you've distanced yourself from sensual desires. You still have sensual desire when your mind's in the jhanas. But when you get to that first jhana, this being Mara knows that you're too wise and it's not going to be able to tempt you, or doesn't choose to tempt you any longer, because it's like blindfolding this being, because the being knows that, you've made your way to this particular mental state. You've distanced yourself from sensual desires. You have too much wisdom at that point that it's not going to try to tempt you any longer. So getting to the jhanas is really helpful. And then the Buddha here, he talks about the same exact things, not only about the first jhana, but the second, third, and fourth as well. And then these other things here that you guys may not have seen recently, these are other attainments that an individual experiences besides the jhanas. And I have this, I think it's in volume 7. If you haven't seen these yet, you can read about these different attainments and what they actually are, because not every person is going to experience every one of these attainments. In terms of the jhanas, every person will experience those on their way to enlightenment, but these particular attainments, not everybody experiences all of these particular attainments on their way to enlightenment. Everybody will experience some of them, but not all of them. And then ultimately the Buddha is just saying, okay, by you understanding sensual desire, by you working on distancing yourself from sensual desires, that this being Mara is no longer going to be able to tempt you, that you're invisible to this being. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this particular chapter. It looks like Chris has a question. Go ahead, sir.
Is meditation on the unattractiveness of the body one of the best ways to cut the 5 cords of sensual pleasure?
This will help you in terms of any kind of sexual desire, but it's not going to help you with all the others. You ultimately are going to need to understand your mind in detail through your mindfulness or awareness of mind to see how it's longing and yearning. I don't know if you were here when I was talking about the coffee example, but you've probably heard it in all the various classes that I teach, that in that situation, that is a sensual desire where my mind was being pulled towards this coffee, but no amount of meditating on the unattractiveness of the body is going to solve that. You need to ultimately delineate your craving, desire, attachment all the way down to what sense base is it's entering through, that odor, that contact, so that now you can restrain the mind and you can protect the mind and guard the doorways of discontentedness.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I'm not seeing questions anywhere else. So now let's go to the next one. It looks like Vibhav's volunteering for that one. Let me get down here to chapter 4. All right, Vibhav, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. One who guards the doors of the 6 sense spaces. And how is a monk guarded as to the doors of the 6 sense spaces? Here, a monk, seeing the form of the eye, he hears the sound of the ear, with the nose smells an odor, the tongue tastes a flavor, with the body touches a physical object, with the mind he recognizes a mental object, does not grasp at the general features or at the details of them. Since craving and aversion, evil, unwholesome states might flow in upon one who dwells with the sense base of the eye uncontrolled, the sense base of the ear uncontrolled, the sense base of the nose uncontrolled, the sense base of the tongue uncontrolled, sense base of the body uncontrolled, the sense base of the mind uncontrolled. He applies himself to such control. He sets a guard over the sense base of the eye, the sense base of the ear, the sense base of the nose, the sense base of the tongue, the sense base of the body, the sense base of the mind, attains control of them. that is how a monk has those six sense bases and guarded. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Vibhav. So here, this is what we've been kind of talking about all the way through here, is that you need to guard these doorways. If you understand craving, desire, attachment in general, that the mind is longing, yearning, and it's wanting agreeable things, it's wanting permanence, it's craving permanence, that's like the first level of understanding of craving, desire, attachment, and sensual desire. But now you need to go further, and you need to be able to see and delineate which doorway is this mind experiencing contact through, so that now I can guard that doorway. And in some cases, it's more than one doorway. That's where it can be very overwhelming sometimes. So this is why, like, when some people go to the dentist, they really don't like it, because all your sense bases are being stimulated, right? When the dentist is in there in your mouth with a whole bunch of tools, you got the eyes, you got the ears, because you got the drill, like, woo! You've got the nose right there smelling what's going on. You've got the taste of what's going on inside your mouth. You've got the bodily contact, and then you've got the mind itself. And oftentimes people feel really overwhelmed when they're in the chair of a dentist, right? Because all six sense bases are experiencing contact at exactly the same time. And that's something that's oftentimes minds are seeing as disagreeable. They're averse to that. And then another example on the other side where it's agreeable is this is the reason why sexual contact is oftentimes something that people really crave and desire, because all six sense bases are typically getting stimulated. The eyes, the ears, certain sounds, certain things that are being said back and forth, the nose, the odor, the tongue, the body, and then the mind itself. And now the mind is longing, yearning for this agreeable contact. Right? So there's all these six sense bases that are involved. And this is where you're going to need to be able to guard these as you're making your way through life. Because as long as you allow your mind to continue to long and yearn and they're uncontrolled, you're going to keep experiencing discontentedness over and over and over again. So you're going to need to gain control of them through first understanding what they are and then being observant of how the mind is longing, yearning through them, so that then anytime you get discontentedness, you use that as the red light on the dashboard of your car. You start looking inward and you start figuring out what of your cravings, desires, attachments, and then delineate it down to what doorway or multiple doorways is the contact entering, so that then you can guard the mind. And now by guarding the mind, as you distance yourself more and more from the object that the mind is craving, you'll eventually eliminate that craving. So let me know what questions you guys have here. I see Vibhav, I think, has a question. Yes, I have a question, Vibhav?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just wondering, when it says it does not grasp at the general features of at the details of them. So like when you see a form, like you maybe see a beautiful woman or, you know, like a nice looking house, a general scenery that you like looks good, like is when it says like details of them, and you're like looking at each and every part of that general view, and then you're saying, okay, and you're taking that into your mind and forming opinions about it, or like or feelings about that. Is that what it means by doesn't grasp the details, or is it okay to look at something which is pretty or good looking and saying, okay, this is good looking, and say that's fine?
Yeah, what he's talking about here is not clinging to it, right? So when you're walking down the street, if you see a beautiful woman or a handsome man, you see, wow, beautiful woman, but you don't like, you know, turn and break your neck to kind of look backwards and check out every last little thing about this person. You just keep walking forward. Or like you were mentioning the example of walking through a neighborhood and you see a beautiful house. There's no harm in looking and be like, wow, that's a beautiful house, and really looking at it. And now you're like, okay, now you move on. You don't cling to it. You're not like, oh, I wish I had that house. Why do they have to live there and not me? Oh, I want that so badly. That's the craving and the clinging to this house, where you can just look at it, appreciate the beauty of it, and move on. And that's how you would not grasp to its general features and details.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, Chris, go ahead, sir.
I have a hard time differentiating between pleasant feelings and just having a preference. Like, for example, when I eat food, I'm not able to determine if I'm just having a preference that this is preferable food or if I'm actually experiencing pleasant feelings from it. And I don't really know exactly 100% what to do.
Okay, two things you can do here is if you're having pleasant feelings and your 4 foundations of mindfulness are well developed, then you're going to see the bodily sensations beforehand. It's typically going to be tingling across the shoulders and the back of the neck and up over the head. This is the bodily sensations associated with pleasant feelings. So you know whether or not your 4 foundations of mindfulness are well developed because you would be able to see the bodily sensations with pleasant feelings and painful feelings. That's how you'll know that your 4 foundations of mindfulness are well developed in terms of the bodily sensations. So you would like to look out for those bodily sensations associated with the arising of conditioned feelings. And that will be an indication for you if you're having conditioned pleasant feelings while you're eating any particular food. The other way that you can do this is if you're not sure, is you can eliminate that particular object of food from your eating for an extended period of time, for multiple months, and see if your mind is actually craving or clinging. So let's just say it's a piece of chocolate cake and you're not sure if you're having conditioned pleasant feelings or not. Eliminate that. Don't eat that chocolate cake. If that's something that you normally eat, leave it behind for multiple months and see if your mind's longing and yearning for it and whether it's really wanting that piece of chocolate cake. And that's how you'll know whether or not there's a craving there or not.
So in the 4 foundations of mindfulness, because I don't think I've developed it to the extent that I could be aware of bodily sensations, I just need to become more aware throughout the day of the discontent feelings that I'm experiencing and the conditions of mind and mental objects.
Yes, so you're gonna need to have the 4 foundations of mindfulness well developed, and you develop that through your breathing mindfulness meditation and practicing mindfulness in your day-to-day life. But in terms of figuring out whether a particular object is a craving, desire, attachment or not, and whether or not you're getting conditioned pleasant feelings from it or not, is just eliminate it. Since your 4 foundations of mindfulness are not yet well developed, just eliminate it from your intake for an extended period of time, and you'll be able to observe whether your mind's longing, yearning for it. And once you eliminate your craving, desire, attachment, if there's one that's there, there's no harm in bringing that food item back in as long as it's something healthy for you. But by eliminating it, then you'll be able to observe the mind over multiple days and weeks and months and see if there's any longing, yearning for it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Okay, Robert, you have a question?
Yeah, so I was reflecting based on this around like relationships and conversations. And I think that has to do with the ears sense base. So it's just if you're around people that are making you feel happy just based on the things they're saying or sad based on the things they're saying, that's something you have to be aware of and sort of cut off because it relates to the mental objects that are associated with those people.
So those people aren't the ones that are making you happy or sad. It's the craving, desire, attachment. It's the central desire. So now if you're in a conversation with someone and you're noticing you always get these pleasant feelings when you're talking with them, you're going to need to restrain the mind in these situations. So if you notice that that's what your mind's doing, as you're making your way towards going to visit that person, you need to almost turn on a switch in the mind, guard the mind. Don't allow the mind to get conditioned pleasant feelings. Learn how to enjoy the conversation, but not allow the mind to get these conditioned pleasant feelings and now cling to the conversation, wanting it to go on and on and on and on. And then the same thing, if you're noticing painful feelings or sadness in a particular conversation, it's always your craving, desire, attachment that's doing this, and you're going to need to restrain the mind. What you would like to be able to get really good at is observing the bodily sensations prior to those conditioned feelings arising, whether they're pleasant, painful, or neither painful nor pleasant, and then cut off and let go. That's part of the restraining of the mind. So in this situation, if you notice that you have a particular affection to talk to someone and you regularly get pleasant feelings, and let's just say you see this person 3 times a week, you would like to start putting some distance between you and this person. Not that you have to tell them that that's what you're doing, because it's not going to be a long-term thing. It's just enough time to allow your mind to eliminate its craving. So you might start seeing them once a week for a while, and then even spread it out once every 2 weeks, once every 3 weeks, and once every 4 weeks. And if this person is a really good friend and you would like to let them know what you're doing, you could do that. And then that way, when you distance your mind from the object that it's craving, it will ultimately eliminate its craving. And now your mind having eliminated its craving, you'll be able to spend time with that person and enjoy your time without actually having conditioned pleasant feelings. And the same thing with painful feelings. If you're noticing painful feelings in talking with someone, distancing yourself from that person, giving your mind time to let go of its craving, then you can learn how to spend time with this person without having conditioned painful feelings.
Okay. And so related to that, so if you're feeling like loved and supported by somebody, but you're not necessarily craving that, but there's somebody you go to for wisdom, is that on a similar basis, or is there some way to know that there's somebody or something that you would like to enjoy or talk to, but differentiate between the craving side of it and just the friendship side?
Yeah, this is where you need to be able to see the mind, how it can enjoy something without a conditioned pleasant feeling. And this isn't something that's very apparent when someone's training their mind until they train it enough that you can experience multiple times enjoying something and notice that there aren't any conditioned pleasant feelings. Because when there's conditioned pleasant feelings, there's going to be those bodily sensations first. Then there's going to be the condition of the mind, and the mind's oftentimes shaken up by the feelings, right? So you need to be able to see that when you step away from that conversation, you can maintain your contentedness, you can maintain your joy, that your mind's not longing, yearning to be back in that conversation. So when you get used to enjoying conversations and spending time with people and not being attached to it, this is where there's real strength in that, because now you can choose to spend time with that person and enjoy it or not, and you can still enjoy that too. If you have a craving to spend time with this person, then that means if you don't see them for a particular period of time, you'll be lonely, you'll be bored, you'll be missing this person, you'll feel like you're missing them. That's the mind's central desire, and the mind has to let that go and learn how to enjoy your time with this person while not clinging to it, the relationship or the time that you're spending with them.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Marcy, is that for reading the next chapter, or you have questions?
I have a question, but I would like to read the next chapter if no one else would like to.
Sure.
So, Teacher David, I had an estranged daughter for many, many, many years. And since beginning walking on this path and practicing stuff, she has slowly started to come back into my life. And, prior to when she first started coming back into my life, I would notice that I would get a lot of bodily sensations. There would be a lot of excitement, nervousness, a little bit of apprehension, like I would have these emotional kind of things going on. And I would always jump to the opportunity to go and spend time with her because I understood that there was a craving. Oh. Am I still there?
Yeah, we still hear you.
Okay. So I understood that there was a craving there. But last night, I had gotten a text and said, hey, we're meeting at a restaurant. We would really like it if you would come. And I was leaving work and I was like, I have time to go, but, I could really just go home. But I noticed that there wasn't any attachment to it. So what I ended up doing, and I don't know if this is something that was correct to do to get the mind to understand whether or not there was craving there or not. What I ended up doing is I actually drove in the opposite direction and went and parked myself somewhere and sat for a moment and tried to analyze, is there really any feeling? And ultimately, there was no anything in the mind about going or not going. It could have gone either way. But ultimately, I ended up going. Is that proper practice in the sense of to really see if there's that craving there for it? Is it kind of drive the mind in an opposite direction?
Well, that's reflection, is looking inward. Whether you physically move in an opposite direction or not, that's up to you. But you do need to be able to look inward, and that's your mindfulness that's allowing you to be able to do that. But if you're not sure in these situations, because it's a long-term relationship, it's a daughter, you need to learn how to say that you're not going to be coming to some of these events. And that's good for your mind. And it's also good for their mind too, that they're not attached to mom always coming to these events. So what you'd like to do is introduce some impermanence into these situations where sometimes you go and sometimes you don't go. And this is really healthy for your mind and their mind too. But if you are looking inward and you can know with 100% certainty that there is no craving in that situation, then yeah, there's no harm in actually going to these kinds of events. You just would like to be doubly sure, right? It's kind of like the old analogy that I use about wringing out the rag. Because since you know that there was a craving there at one time, and maybe you're not sure whether it's fully extinguished or not, then in that situation, then sometimes don't go and see how the mind feels about that. And that's what's going to help you to be able to know with 100% certainty that you've eliminated this craving. And like I mentioned, it's going to help their mind too.
Yeah, so maybe the next time, if she calls, no matter what it is, whether I've got time or not, maybe I should just restrain and really test to see if there is, because when I was doing that inner reflection, I was really like trying to like, hey, are you feeling anything? Or is there any sensation here? Is there, you're longing for anything? So yeah, I think that's what I might want to do the next time, just to really see.
Yeah, sometimes these cravings are very subtle and very minimal. We tend to talk about them in the extremes because that's what people can understand. But remember, there's a whole spectrum of craving, desire, attachments here. There's the real strong, intense ones that are really noticeable, but then there's these really light, very minimal ones. It's called residual clinging. And those you're not always aware of. So because you're not always going to be aware of them, that's why you do these things to test the mind and don't go to these events sometimes and kind of see how the mind, functions not going to the event. And then you'll be able to see very clearly whether or not there's any clinging or residual clinging still in the mind.
Yeah, that seems wise.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you, Teacher David. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yusuf, do you have a question? Hello there, Yusuf. Do you have a question?
Hello, David.
Hello.
I watched your live stream 5 a.m. in my time and went to college and got back from college and slept for 5 hours. 5 hours and you're still streaming. Are you planning to stream permanently?
Yusuf, I'm having a class here. This morning I had a class and this evening I have a class, but in the middle of the day I wasn't teaching.
Okay. I heard Robert ask about love and attachment or something like this. Is this chapter related to what he was asking? Like, can I ask about attachment or it's not related?
Anything related to attachment is all wrapped up into central desire. But we have a lot of chapters that we're going to be studying today. We're only on chapter 4. If this is something personal, it'd be better to talk about it in a personal conversation, even though we've had lots of people asking those kinds of questions. But if we can move on in some of the chapters, and then maybe you can slip your question in one of our future chapters. How about that?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, so Marcy, you would like to read this next one, which is chapter 5?
Sure. One to reach growth, increase, and maturity in this training discipline. Monks. When a cattle worker possesses 11 factors, he is capable of keeping and caring for a herd of cattle. What 11? Here, a cattle worker has wisdom of form. He is skilled in characteristics. He removes flies' eggs. He dresses wounds. He smokes out the sheds. He knows the watering places. He knows what it is to have drunk. He knows the road. He is skilled in pastures. He does not milk dry, and he shows extra veneration to those bulls who are fathers and leaders of the herd. When a cattle worker possesses these 11 factors, he's capable of keeping and caring for a herd of cattle. So too, monks. When a monk possesses these 11 qualities, he is capable of growth, increase, and maturity in the teachings and the discipline. What 11? Here, a monk has wisdom of form. He is skilled in characteristics. He removes flies, eggs. He dresses wounds. He smokes out the shed. He knows the watering places. He knows what it is to have drunk. He knows the road. He is skilled in pastures. He does not milk dry. He shows extra veneration to those elder monks of long standing who have long gone forth, the fathers and leaders of the community. And how does he remove fly eggs? Here, when a thought of sensual desire has arisen, a monk does not tolerate it. He abandons it, removes it, does away with it, and obliterates it. When a thought of ill will has arisen, when the thought of harming has arisen, when evil, unwholesome states have arisen, a monk does not tolerate them. He abandons them, removes them, does away with them, and obliterates them. That is how a monk removes flies' eggs. How does a monk dress wounds? Here, on seeing a form with his eyes, a monk does not grasp at its signs and features. Since if he left the eyes, sense space unguarded, evil, unwholesome states of craving and aversion might invade him. He practices the way of its restraint. He guards the eye's sense space. He undertakes the restraint of the eye's sense space. On hearing a sound with the ear, on smelling an odor with the nose, on tasting a flavor with the tongue, on touching a physical object with the body, on recognizing a mental object with the mind, a monk does not grasp at its signs and features. Since, if he has left the mind sense space unguarded, evil, unwholesome states of craving and aversion might invade him. He practices the way of its restraint. He guards the mind sense space. He undertakes the restraint of the mind sense space. That is how a monk dresses a wound. Here, only 2 of the 11 factors are shared as these apply to sensual desire and 6th sense space. See the included reference for the entire teaching. Thank you, Teacher David.
Okay, thank you, Marcy. So yeah, there's this whole teaching here that the Buddha provides that has these 11 different factors. And I actually have it in the book series, but here in this particular book, we only have the 2 aspects of this teaching that relate to sensual desire. So what the Buddha is talking about here is that an individual who is working to eliminate sensual desire doesn't tolerate any kind of thought of ill will or any thought of harming. This is going back to right intention, right? So when you have elimination of a thought of sensual desire where the mind's longing and yearning, or you eliminate a thought of ill will, or you eliminate a thought of harming, you're now practicing right intention, that you're practicing the intention of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. And that's what you're going to need to practice in order to make your way towards the elimination of sensual desire. Because if you allow those thoughts to come into the mind, you're complacent at that point. Oftentimes when we talk about complacency, people think about not coming to classes or not meditating or not reading books. Yeah, that's complacency. But the way that the Buddha talks about complacency is he describes it all the way down to the level that if you allow a sensual thought or a thought of ill will or a thought of harming to come into the mind and you do nothing about it, this is complacency. So even if you're walking down the street and any of these thoughts come into the mind, that's where you apply right effort to cut it off and let it go. Then he talks about dressing the wounds. And by the way, he's using an analogy here that people would understand. Kind of herding cattle. These are all things that people would have understood during his lifetime. So here he's talking about dressing the wounds and kind of helping the cow so that they don't have any wounds. And the Buddha is talking about that as being able to make sure that you're not grasping at the signs and the features of any particular objects that the mind is longing, yearning for through the sense bases. That's dressing the wounds. The way you can think about this is like the mind has this wound of sensual desire, and now it's longing, yearning. It's kind of oozing this pus or oozing this blood out of these sense bases. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to patch that up. You're trying to restrain that so that you don't keep oozing this blood and this pus out of the sense bases, so that you restrain the mind. And that's what's going to help you to eliminate the sensual desire. So let me know what questions you guys have here on these 2 things, which are part of this larger discourse that the Buddha shares. Looks like Chris has a question in Zoom. He says, how would a desire to meet the expectations of my wife be classified in terms of sensual desire? I think this is something that's burdening the mind. So that sounds like it's from the sense base of the mind itself. that the mind has adopted this expectation of wanting to please the wife. Now, there's probably certain things that you see when she's pleased. You might be also having sensual desire for her smile, or she might say certain things like, "That a boy, Chris, good job," right? If you might kind of like that. Or maybe there's sexual contact involved. If she's pleased, maybe there's that she's willing to have sex or something like this. Or maybe she makes you some wonderful food when she's happy, and you're having longing, yearning through the tongue sense base, right? So you need to look at this and see. But that particular desire originates with the mind longing, yearning through the mind itself, because you've adopted this expectation within your own mind. But now there's other sense bases that could be involved. And that's where understanding the 6 sense bases, you can really dissect this and see what's really going on in the mind. Because then when you dissect it, you're able to actually fix it and resolve it. Whereas if you didn't understand these things, you wouldn't be able to do that. Okay, I don't see any other questions anywhere. So let's go on to the next one, which is chapter 6. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Okay, it looks like Marcy and then Yusuf. All right, Yusuf, if you'd like to read, go ahead, sir. Marcy, since you've already read, we'll let Yusuf go for it.
The 3 underlying tendencies, monks, dependent on the I and forms, I consciousness arises. The meeting of the 3 is contact. With contact as condition, there arises a feeling, felt as a pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. Dependent on the ear and sound, ear consciousness arises. The meeting of the 3 is contact. With contact as condition, there arises a feeling, felt as pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. Dependent on the nose and odors, nose consciousness arises. The melting of the 3 is contact. With contact as condition, there arises a feeling, felt as pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. Dependent on the tongue and flavors, tongue consciousness arises. The meeting of the 3 is contact. With contact as condition, there arises a feeling, felt as pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. Dependent on the body and physical objects, body consciousness arises. The meeting of the 3 is contact. With contact as condition, there arises a feeling, felt as pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. Dependent on the mind and mental objects, mind consciousness arises. The meeting of the 3 is contact. With contact as condition, there arises a feeling, felt as pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. When one is touched by a pleasant feeling, if one excites in it, welcomes it, and remains holding to it, then the underlying tendency to crave lies within one. When one is touched by a painful feeling, if one sorrows, grieves, and has displeasure, weeps, beating one's breast, and becomes distraught, then the underlying tendency to aversion lies within one. When one is touched by a neither painful nor pleasant feeling, if one does not understand as it actually is, the cause, the disappearance, the gratification, the danger, and the escape in regard to the feeling, then one underlying tendency to ignorance and of true reality lies within one. Monks, that one shall hear and now make an end of discontentedness without abandoning the underlying tendency to crave for pleasant feelings, without abolishing the underlying tendency to aversion towards painful feelings, without eliminating the underlying tendency towards ignorance and of true reality in regard to neither painful nor pleasant feelings, without abandoning ignorance and arousing true wisdom, is impossible.
Okay, thank you, sir. So here, the Buddha is helping you to understand what is contact. We've been mentioning this throughout the class today, that there's contact through the sense bases, but you need to be able to understand what forms contact. When there's the internal sense base, and then there's the external sense base, and the mind becomes aware of it, those 3 things are contact, that now you've experienced contact. So when there's the I that exists, and then there's a physical form that exists, and now the mind becomes aware of that physical form, that's called contact. And whenever there's contact, if there's craving, desire, attachment in the mind, that's when the pleasant, painful, or neither painful nor pleasant arises. And this is where this becomes helpful, because if you're ever experiencing any conditional feelings, all you need to do is break contact. If you eliminate contact and you walk in the other direction or remove the mind from the contact that it's experiencing, you can now train the mind to cut off and let go and eliminate the craving, desire, attachment. And ultimately, over time, you'll be able to experience any contact through the sense spaces, and your mind will be stable and steady. It'll be joyful and cheerful and uplifted. But in the meantime, as you're making your way towards that, you're going to need to be observant of the mind, and you're going to need to be able to notice when there's been contact and you're noticing conditioned feelings arising, that you break contact and step away. And this is why if you're in a conversation and you're noticing anger starting to arise, if you understand right speech, you know that it's not the proper time to speak when your mind is angry, so you step away from the conversation. You break contact. Now what the Buddha is talking about down here is he's saying, okay, in order to eliminate your discontentedness and get to enlightenment, you're going to need to eliminate the three poisons or the three unwholesome roots. What he's saying here is, one shall here and now make an end of discontentedness without abandoning craving, anger, and ignorance. Here it's referred to as craving, aversion, and ignorance. Without having done that, you can't get to enlightenment. That's why he's saying it is impossible to get to enlightenment without having eliminated craving, anger, and ignorance, because that's the high level way of referring to the 10 fetters. And the way that you eliminate craving, anger, and ignorance is that whenever you're having contact and you're noticing that there's discontentedness arising, one aspect of that is you need to step away. That's part of your right mindfulness, being aware of that. And then it's right effort to cut off and let go, distancing yourself from the objects. And you're going to need to do that for a period of time until the cravings, desires, attachments are eliminated. Then ultimately, with certain things, you'll be able to come back together in that situation. But sometimes you need to distance yourself for a good 3 months, 6 months, even a year sometimes with some of these cravings, desires, attachments before the mind will actually let go. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this particular chapter. This is chapter 6, the 3 underlying tendencies. So it looks like Chris has a question here. When I experience a painful feeling or discomfort or melancholy, what is the best way to handle it? Cut it off and let it go as a bodily sensation. And if you're close to the object that you're experiencing contact with, distance yourself from that object. And then I understand the words of cutting it off and letting it go, but I don't understand what that means in practice. What that means is redirecting your mind. So early on, you're going to need to redirect your mind. So if you're watching the news and you're noticing anger or frustration arising, turn off the news, get up and go for a walk outside. That's redirecting your mind. As you do that multiple times and you're practicing your breathing mindfulness meditation in generosity, you'll get really good of internally cutting off and letting go. You won't need to redirect the mind because you can actually do it internally within the mind. But that's when the mind is more well developed that you're able to actually do that. So you can ultimately develop to that point where you can internally cut it off and let it go. Just like when you're in breathing mindfulness meditation and your mind moves off the breath and you internally cut that thought off and bring the mind back to the breath, that's the same thing that you're doing whenever you're noticing discontentedness arising. That's what it means to cut off and let go. And that's why you're practicing breathing mindfulness meditation 2 or 3 times a day so that you can build the ability to cut off and let go. And that's also why you're practicing generosity, to be able to train your mind to let go. So that now in the day-to-day situations, your mind is well trained to be able to let go. But in the meantime, before you get to that point, you're going to need to redirect your mind by physically moving in a different direction, like getting up and going outside for a walk. Now, Chris is asking more. So if I'm experiencing contact through the mind that's causing discontentedness, would using the phone or divert the mind help? Yeah, that's redirecting the mind. Or turning on music to redirect the mind might be another idea. Yeah, exactly. You can use these kinds of things to redirect the mind in a different direction. Okay, let me see if we have anything else. And it looks like Roxanne is asking a question on Facebook. Neither painful nor pleasant feelings. How do you differentiate that from releasing from craving, desire, attachment? The neither painful nor pleasant feelings are arising because of craving, desire, attachment. If it wasn't for craving, desire, attachment, the neither painful nor pleasant feelings wouldn't be there. So the common example that I give of neither painful nor pleasant is, say that you're on public transportation and now somebody that you don't know comes and sits next to you and your body is touching their body. So now you're experiencing contact through the sense base of the body. And maybe the mind finds this to be disagreeable. And now there's that unsatisfied thought in the mind, that unsatisfactory feeling that's starting to arise. That's because of the craving, desire, attachment, that the mind doesn't want other people touching this body. The mind wants this certain physical space and it doesn't want other people close to you. So that's from the craving, desire, attachment. And now it's arising the neither painful nor pleasant feelings, which is the dissatisfaction or the uncomfortableness. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. So let's move on to chapter 7. Would somebody like to read this one? Okay, Yusuf, go ahead, sir.
Wasn't Marcia or something else volunteered?
You raised your hand and I called on you, so go ahead, sir.
Okay. Who seeks excitement in discontentedness is not afraid from discontentedness. Monks. One who seeks excitement in form seeks excitement in discontentedness. One who seeks excitement in feeling seeks excitement in discontentedness. One who seeks excitement in perception seeks excitement in discontentedness. One who seeks excitement in violational formations, choices, and decisions seeks excitement in discontentedness. One who seeks excitement in consciousness seeks excitement in discontentedness. One who seeks excitement in discontentedness, I say, is not afraid from discontentedness.
Okay, thank you, Yusuf. So here, what the Buddha is helping you to be able to see is that the mind can long and yearn and seek pleasant feelings or excitement in the 5 aggregates. The 5 aggregates are your physical form, the feelings, the perceptions, like your views and opinions about the world, your volitional formations, which are your choices and decisions, and then the consciousness, the mind itself. So as long as your mind's clinging to these things and you're longing, yearning, seeking pleasant feelings based on them, then you're essentially headed towards discontentedness, is what the Buddha is explaining here. So in terms of this body, like if you spend a whole lot of time making sure every little hair is exactly the right spot, making sure every little aspect of your skin is exactly perfect, making sure every little piece of jewelry is in exactly the right spot before you head outside. This is the mind seeking excitement because it gets this pleasure in looking a certain way and it's clinging to this physical form. And the mind can be doing this with any of the 5 aggregates. So the Buddha is helping you to understand that it would be unwise to seek excitement in these things because this is just the mind clinging and craving. And now your mind is headed towards this discontentedness. And if you allow the mind to get the conditioned pleasant feelings, the painful ones are right around the corner. So if you spend all this time putting your hair in exactly the right spot, well, that day that you wake up and you have a bad hair day and you go outside, you're going to feel frustrated or agitated or annoyed because now you're having a bad hair day, right? You're going outside with your hair not looking the way you want it to look. So this is the problem with the mind, that if you seek excitement in a certain particular aspect of this being, form, feelings, perceptions, volitional formations, or consciousness, then there's only a matter of time before the painful feelings come in. And the Buddha is saying you can't get free of discontentedness by continuing to long and yearn for these conditioned pleasant feelings. You need to be able to see these conditioned pleasant feelings as just as much a part of the problem as the painful ones, because it's very intuitive to eliminate the anger, the hatred, the ill will, the frustration, the agitation, the annoyance, the guilt and shame and fear and stress and anxiety. That's like really normal. Like, yeah, sure, eliminate those. But getting rid of the conditional pleasant feelings, it's not as intuitive to people because remember, these are conditional pleasant feelings. that what you're looking to get to is the unconditioned happiness, the unconditioned joy. So as long as you allow your mind to keep longing, yearning, and chasing after these conditioned pleasant feelings, sometimes you're going to get what you want and you're going to get pleasant feelings. Other times you're not. And now you're going to get the sadness, anger, frustration. But even if you get what you want, when that thing changes because of impermanence, your mind's going to end up in the painful feelings. So you need to be able to be willing to let go of this temporary pleasant feelings. You need to be willing to let go of the temporary happiness in order to get to the permanent happiness, the permanent joy. If you're not willing to let go of the conditional happiness, you're never going to get to the unconditioned happiness. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this particular chapter. Okay, Yusuf, you have a question?
Sir, how can one seek excitement in a perception?
Your perceptions are your views and opinions. So sometimes people get such pleasant feelings from sharing their views and opinions. I think you probably have this in some situations where you're sharing your views and opinions. You just enjoy talking and sharing all the things that you're thinking and you're doing. This is the conditioned pleasant feelings that one is now seeking excitement in their perceptions. They enjoy so much sharing their views and opinions with other people.
So perception isn't like the thought I receive from like anything external, but it's like an opinion also?
A perception is your views and opinions, and your mind will cling to these. And now when you're clinging to these, you might take great enjoyment and excitement in sharing your views and opinions with other people. I was just at dinner last night with a couple of students, and there was this one new student there, and he just shared everything that he thought he knew about the world. Nobody ever even asked him a question. And he was just talking and talking and talking and talking. This is seeking excitement in your perceptions, that you have this great enjoyment in just sharing your views and opinions with other people.
So if I were to say, I don't like the color white because it can get dirty easily, would that be my perception, my opinion?
Yes, that's your view and opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Chris is asking a question. If there is discontentedness and the person is not doing anything but sitting or laying down in discontentedness, is it wise to get up and try to find something to do to divert the mind? Yes, because if your mind's just dwelling in discontentedness, your mind's staying wired that way. That's the condition of the mind. It's already went past the bodily sensations. It went past the feelings. And now your mind's dwelling in discontentedness. That's the condition of the mind. And the longer you allow the mind to be wired that way, the longer it's going to stay that way. So you need to apply right effort to cut that off and get rid of it. And getting up and moving in a different direction and redirecting the mind is what you need to be able to do. And now you mentioned again, such as music, going on a walk, using the phone, making a personal phone call. Yeah, you can do all those things. I'm having a challenging time enjoying anything but the teachings and wondering if using the things like music, entertainment, etc. to divert the mind can help me enjoy other things besides the teachings. Perhaps try it. That's the best way to know for sure. Okay. So I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. So now let's go to chapter 8. Let me see. This is very similar to the one that we just read. I see Rachel and Pat is volunteering to read. Go ahead, Rachel. It looks like Pat put his hand down so that you could read.
Okay. One who seeks excitement in the six sense bases seeks excitement in discontentedness. Monks. One who seeks excitement in the eyes seeks excitement in discontentedness. One who seeks excitement in the ear seeks excitement in discontentedness. One who seeks excitement in the nose seeks excitement in discontentedness. One who seeks excitement in the tongue seeks excitement in discontentedness. One who seeks excitement in the body seeks excitement in discontentedness. One who seeks excitement in the mind seeks excitement in discontentedness. One who seeks excitement in discontentedness, I say, is not freed from discontentedness.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So this is very similar to the last one that we were just talking about, but instead of longing, yearning, and taking this great pleasure and sharing your views and opinions or any of the other aspects of the 5 aggregates, Here, this is the mind longing, yearning through the sense bases. And this is what the mind is going to do, is it's going to long and yearn with this central desire through each one of these sense bases. And the more that you can see that the mind's chasing after that gratification, that pleasure, you can restrain it so that you can let go of that temporary happiness so that you can get to the permanent happiness. That's what you're interested in getting to. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this one. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions there. So now we go to chapter 9. Looks like Pat is volunteering to read that one. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. One dwelling with craving as a partner. Venerable Sir, in what way is one dwelling with a partner? There are migajala forms recognizable by the eye that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tempting. If a monk seeks excitement in them, welcomes them, and remains holding to them, excitement arises. When there is excitement, there is obsession of mind. When there is obsession of mind, there is bondage. Bound by the fetter of sensual desire, migajala, a monk is called one dwelling with a partner. There are migajala, sounds recognizable by the ear, odors recognizable by the nose, flavors recognizable by the tongue, physical objects recognizable by the body, mental objects recognizable by the mind that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tempting. If a monk seeks excitement in them, he is called one dwelling with a partner. Migajala, even though a monk who dwells, thus resorts to forests and groves, for remote lodgings where there are few sounds and little noise, unoccupied, hidden from people, appropriate for seclusion, he is still called one dwelling with a partner. For what reason? Because craving is his partner, and he has not abandoned it. Therefore, he is called one dwelling with partner. Venerable Sir, in what way is one a lone dweller? There are migajala, forms recognizable by the eye that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tempting. If a monk does not seek excitement in them, does not welcome them, and does not remain holding to them, excitement is eliminated. When there is no excitement, there is no obsession of mind. When there is no obsession of mind, there is no bondage. Released from the fetter of sensual desire, migajala, a monk is called a lone dweller. There are migajala, sounds recognizable by the ear, odors recognizable by the nose, flavors recognizable by the tongue, physical objects recognizable by the body, mental objects recognizable by the mind that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tempting. If a monk does not seek excitement in them, he is called a lone dweller. Migajala, even though a monk who dwells, thus lives in the vicinity of a village, associating with male and female ordained practitioners, with male and female household practitioners, with kings and royal ministers, with sectarian teachers and their disciples, he is still called a lone dweller. For what reason? Because craving is his partner, and he has abandoned it. Therefore, he is called a lone dweller. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pat. So what the Buddha is essentially talking about, and you'll see him describe this in detail in other discourses, is that having sensual desire in the mind is like a burden that you're carrying around, and you're having to feed this burden. If you think about all the times that you might have went out and bought the latest, greatest thing because you just had to have it, and you maybe spent extra money to be able to get that particular thing, it's very expensive to feed craving, desire, attachment. So craving is like a partner. It's like a burden that you're carrying around. And the Buddha is giving you this story to be able to help you see that as long as you keep having sensual desire, you're going to keep having to feed this partner, essentially. That he's giving an example more based on the ordained life, but you will see that he's talking about this burden of carrying around the craving, desire, attachment. But you can lay down that burden and set it down. And now you don't have to keep having the mind pull in all these different directions. So let me know if you guys have questions on this chapter. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So now let's go to the last chapter. Is there someone who would like to read this? Okay, it looks like Chris would like to read. Let's go to Chris. And by the way, Chris, we've actually already read this entire first part. This is similar to the discourse before, where it has 11 factors. So we can move through some of this where we don't have to necessarily read all this, unless you'd like to.
Okay, so I start at what, 11?
Yeah, if you'd like to come down here, this will kind of help us.
Okay. What 11? Here, a monk has no wisdom of form. He is unskilled in characteristics. He fails to remove flies' eggs. He fails to dress wounds. He fails to smoke out the sheds. He does not know the watering place. He does not know what it is to have drunk. He does not know the road. He is unskilled in pastures. He milks dry, and he shows no extra veneration to those elder monks of long standing who have gone forth, the fathers and the leaders of the community. How does a monk fail to remove fly eggs? Here, when a thought of sensual desire has arisen, a monk tolerates it. He does not abandon it, remove it, do away with it, and obliterate it. When a thought of ill will has arisen, when a thought of harming has arisen, when evil and unwholesome states have arisen, a monk tolerates it. He does not abandon it, remove it, do away with it, and obliterate it. That is how a monk fails to remove fly eggs. And how does a monk fail to dress wounds? Here, on seeing a form with the eye, a monk grasps at its signs and features, even though when he leaves the eye sense space unguarded, evil and wholesome states of craving and aversion might invade him. He does not practice the way of restraint. He does not guard the eye sense space. He does not undertake the restraint of the eye facility. On hearing a sound with the ear, on smelling an odor with the nose, on tasting a flavor with the tongue, on touching a physical object with the body, on recognizing a mental object with the mind, he grasps at its signs and features, even though when he leaves the mind sense base unguarded, evil, unwholesome states of craving and aversion might invade him. He does not practice the way of restraint. He does not guard the mind sense base. He does not undertake the restraint of the mind sense base. That is how a monk fails to dress wounds. Here, only 2 of the 11 factors are shared, as these 2 apply to sensual desire and the 6 sense bases. See the included reference for the entire teaching.
Okay, thank you, Chris. So this is essentially what we were reading before, but now he's wording it in the opposite direction of whereas one is not capable of growth, increase, and maturity in the teachings. And he's talking about someone who is not eliminating the central desire, one who is not eliminating the thought of ill will, or is not eliminating the harming that the mind might have these thoughts, these unwholesome states. An individual is complacent and not actually taking action to be able to cut that off and let it go. And then the same thing down here, that the individual is grasping at the signs and features rather than training the mind to be restrained. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter. Again, very similar to the last one that we talked about previously. All right, Chris, go ahead, sir.
Okay, so if I start using music to divert the mind, I don't really tend to listen to music, and that's one of the reasons why I think it might help me. But how do I listen to music to divert the mind without grasping at its signs and features?
That you don't cling to it, that you don't get so excited when you're listening to the music, that you just enjoy it. It's like, wow, this is like real artistically, really nice art. That's essentially when I listen to music, I'm paying attention to the artistry of the music, right? So you can do that without clinging to it and getting so excited just because you're listening to music.
Okay, thank you.
And then, by the way, on the other side, some of these songs are quite sad topics, and sometimes people can become sad or grieving because of it. So you need to be able to keep that in check too, so that you're not getting excited, but you're also not having sadness or painful feelings as a result of music as well. And typically people will consider that to be a good song, right? That it elicits some kind of emotion in the mind. But more and more, you'll be able to train your mind to not do that. And for what you're doing is you're just using it to redirect the mind. And now if you're noticing that you're getting pleasant feelings or painful feelings with the music, cut that off and go do something else. Okay, let me see if we have any questions anywhere else. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere else. So I'll just end by thanking all of you guys for reading. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your interest to learn and understand the teachings of the Buddha. Next week, we're going to be in the next 10 chapters, chapters 11 through 20. So if you'd like to read them ahead of time, you're more than welcome to do that, because there's words there that are going to help you beyond just the words of the Buddha. There's guidance from me that's going to help you to understand how to integrate these into your day-to-day life. And that's where you're really going to be able to understand this, because you have more time to think about it. And you'll be able to see more of what I'm teaching, because I'm only able to teach certain aspects of each discourse in these classes because we only have a limited amount of time. But in the books, I've been able to really elaborate on each individual discourse and helping you to be able to learn how to understand it intellectually and then practice it in your day-to-day life. Tomorrow in our group learning program, we're going to be in Volume 1, Chapter 20. This is titled Animal to Human, the Evolution of Our Consciousness. This is where I first start introducing people to the cycle of rebirth and helping you to understand that the unenlightened mind is oftentimes functioning very much like an animal. And part of this journey to enlightenment is to shed these animalistic instincts and to become a better and better human being. So that's what I'm going to be teaching tomorrow in the group learning program. So you're more than welcome to join that. This Monday, I'm going to be teaching a Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment course, which I do every week, the first full week of each month. I'll be teaching a foundation here in Chiang Mai. So you're more than welcome to attend that either in person or online. And then, of course, on Wednesdays, I'm teaching the meditation where I'll guide students in that and then open up to any and all questions that you have. So thank you all for joining, and perhaps I'll see you guys in a future class. Be well and take care. Sawadee ka.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.